so we can post it for folks who couldn't make it today. And and then I'll share the screen.
Okay.
And go at it.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, especially our West Coasters. Thank you for being here so early in the morning. Today, our agenda, Cello, if you want to go ahead to the next one. I think we've had our welcome and introductions. Mike and I have discussed the business process model that I have presented last meeting, and we'll talk about a little bit of area that we're going to be looking at, some of the sub-process and some of the kind of discovery we've had around that model. And then Cello will lead us with the Mentimeter results, the exercise from last meeting, and the business process maturity assessment, and we'll go on to future meetings and open discussion. So last time I presented this revised business process model. Mike and I did some work to flesh out some more of the details, and we got together to discuss the possible diving into the sub-processes within this. If we want to go left to right, a lot of these boxes are automated, and where we kind of landed was the last yellow box in the upper right, the report and review energy usage and coordinate ongoing activities. So I don't know if Mike, you want to talk about it a little bit now, or if you want me to continue on.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, it's fairly clear from Eric's description that, let me just add a little bit of color to it. Listening to Eric describe what's going on, a lot of, as Eric said, a lot of it is automated, or it's a manual process that is in the domain of some other role, like finance. Amending the budget may be substantial, but that's in another group. And it became clear that what we need is detail on the workings of, the hard part of the energy management team, the difficult things that Eric works on. And that appears to be, although it, we need more detail on it, but it appears to be in that block that Eric just described. So maybe Eric, another something to do would be to fill in the details on what are those hard parts and who's involved in it. The team would probably find some interesting things in there.
Yeah, so when spoiler from what the discussion we had last meeting, I think a lot of the challenges are around communication and operate, that relationship with operations as well as the executive level. And it's becoming clear to me that for me also, that's kind of the hard part. So in that box, in the review and report, currently I'm meeting we have 5 different water treatment plants. So we are meeting monthly to review all these outputs. So energy management in general, we're collecting a ton of data. I think we're all kind of in the same boat. Either we are collecting a lot of data or trying to collect a lot of data. And it's how do we make it more impactful? How do we make operations listen to us more or gain more traction with them? So that's what's going on in that box for me, and that's just a bite-sized piece. So unfortunately, that's where we have such a large organization. It would be hard for me to try to interface with all these operational people to do that. So I'm starting with the 5 water treatment plants, which are 5 of our biggest facilities, but we also have a wastewater plant. We also have the collection and distribution systems, which operate all these facilities. So that's where we want to flesh out how do we effectively communicate our data and influence operational change to improve energy performance at our organization. But outside of that, when Mike and I were talking about it, really another piece is the executive leadership and the management of the organization, and that's not captured in my business process at all right now. And I don't really have a lot of work in that area, so that's something I need to grow myself and my team to capture. So that was one area I didn't know if any other utilities had any processes that they're interacting with their executive leadership, and if they have anything they could contribute specifically to help me and to help understand how to go about that, because I have some interaction but no formal interaction. I don't have any any repeated or structured communication with our executive leadership team.
Eric, this is just a reminder, but David Ponder from MCES, when his presentation was largely focused on that executive inclusion and direction and strategies and all that. So we were thinking that it would sure be good if he documented his process and that we ultimately maybe merged it in with what you have. But he can't join us he was really slammed work-wise too, and so he couldn't join us for a couple more times.
Yeah, and I think other utilities have that interaction, are dealing more with that level than I am. So if there's anybody else as well.
George and Josh, yeah.
Yep, George and Josh come to mind.
George has his hand up.
Oh, okay. George?
I'm not sure if I was off most of December, and I can't really remember if I told you guys what I did at the beginning of December, which was I went to our senior leadership team and basically kind of said, we've had this policy for 8 years. Can we ramp up our efforts a little bit? And they agreed. So our program is partially funded by our provincial electricity utility. And every couple of years, we have to go through a process called an energy management assessment. And it's a structured, facilitated workshop where we go through and we basically look at an ISO 50001 energy management structure, plot where we are on various, with respect to various business practices, and then set priorities for the next 2 years. So that we've done these several times, but it never seems to get traction after we do the assessment. So I've gotten commitment for a new task force that it has a representative in relatively high management from every department. And I have asked for and received a corporate sponsor. So we had a corporate sponsor back about 7 years ago, and that guy got fired. And we've never had one since. So I now have a new corporate sponsor. I have a monthly meeting set up with him. We will have this energy management assessment. We'll get priorities set out of it, and it'll turn into a real strategic energy management plan. And that's intended to be the document and structure that then requires us to report regularly to upper management. And I'm hoping that with this new corporate sponsor, he's going to keep things. We're going to do an actual project charter for the policy implementation, so it's very clear who's doing what and why we're doing it. So I'm hoping that all of this is going to kind of inject the accountability at all levels into whatever it is we decide we want to do for energy management. Sorry, that's a little bit long-winded. I hope it made sense.
It makes sense. if there are no hands up, I have a comment I would like to offer. I think this is really wonderful that we started mapping things out. And it's good that we started with something that is specific, and just want to say a couple of things of how we can scale this up and where we can go from here. This is really our first example, and then also the goal tree is really a nice thing that you developed, Eric, and it's a part of what energy management overall is. So, for example, there are other processes. For example, George now saying that they're going to be preparing a strategic energy management plan. It would be nice to know what is the process for developing an energy management strategic plan. It would be nice to get examples for utilities to share and say, you know, maybe Josh has one on his shelf, or maybe somebody else has that, and sharing between utilities, and therefore we can start developing the pieces that describe different components of energy management. So I think this is an excellent first step, and the having this documentation really helps to communicate between utilities and then with the executives as well. What is it that people are doing? And then discussion is around a map or something that's concrete. So what would be wonderful is if we could identify several things. First of all, there is space on our OneDrive. There's a place where people can start sharing artifacts. So, for example, I'm looking for an artifact, like the KPI reports and dashboard. I'm sure other people would want to say, yeah, what does that look like? So we can start, sharing those types of artifacts. I think it would be very helpful just looking at this diagram. The other thing is, for example, you have these reports, you have, Power BI. It'd be nice to get a demo and so other people can hear, see the examples and get inspired, and maybe they have something similar, and maybe they use a spreadsheet that could be also just connected to Power BI and stuff like that. So there are different dimensions we can go. One is really mature this specific one, and the second is develop something similar for, let's say, the process to develop the strategic plan. I'm sure that this report that you produce, the final report of this process, is the final deliverable is, the report on energy usage. I'm sure that is useful, that output is useful for other things. So let's then grow from there and say, where is that report used? So we can start getting a bigger picture of energy management. That was always our goal. And Eric just took one thing to plant the seed. Does this make sense to folks? Yeah. So I after this I will post. I'm writing notes to myself, a link to our knowledge base, where if people look at this, and I'll have a folder with the name of this process. So if people have artifacts or examples or something like that related to this process, they can just dump them in there, and we can discuss them in future meetings and so forth.
So George, I don't know what the best timing for you would be, but it would be good for you to share what the latest is, graphically. And then, what Eric did is he worked with Mike to develop a business process model, which didn't take all that long. And it's a matter of time on your part, but that would be really useful to lay out something. It could even be the guts of it without getting into too much detail, for starters to share with the team.
Yeah, and for example, when it comes to the development of the strategic energy management plan, just this exercise of developing business process model would, document and put your thoughts together, like what are the swim lanes, who should be involved, what are the deliverables, what are the systems, what is the data that we're going to use, and stuff like that. So, and it would be easier to communicate to others what you're doing, because they don't give us, executives don't give technical people hours to explain what they're doing, I keep hearing about, quote, elevator speeches all the time, So would you be game, George, to work with Mike on trying to put together a similar model for the development of the energy management plan?
Yes, I would, definitely. Time is my biggest enemy right now. I don't know, my group of 3 is down to, I'm one of the 3, is down to 2 now. One guy is on parental leave for, I don't know, still another 4 or 5 months. Cello and Scott, I'm not sure if through the other groups, something else that's going on up here is our provincial engineering regulator has changed its governance act. We had a huge environmental disaster about, I don't know, it's probably 6 or 7, more than that, probably 8 years ago, where a mining tailings dam failed. And it was so disastrous that the Engineering and Geoscientists Association has rewritten its governance act. And it's put in a lot more checks and balances, part of which is developing and documenting process models like this. So it's kind of something that I'm going to have to do anyway. So it's just a matter of time when we can get it going. And a lot of this has been rattling around in my little head for many years. So it's just a matter of getting it on paper as kind of the first pass. So the long version of the answer is yes. It's just a matter of when I can squeeze it in. So
we'll go to Josh next, but before we go to Mike, do you mind?
Yeah,
Mike,
go ahead, Cello. I just had a comment, but go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike, and then I'll.
Well, I was going to suggest just to kind of shorten the time frame. There are some energy management business process models out there that used in industry or elsewhere that might provide a starting point. And rather than task the team with coming up with their specific detailed business process, we might one approach we might take is to look at those models, see if they provide anything in terms of material that we could adapt, and then modify them. That might help streamline things a bit, get us kick-started. So I don't know what you want to do, but that's a suggestion. And it would take 15 minutes to describe it to George or others if they're interested.
Well, if you can find specifically one that talks about preparing a strategic plan for energy management, so we kind of chunk it out, that would be fantastic. And George, I think that it's completely understandable. Mike can also help if you can borrow a person to help you from some other department during the or kind of broaden, so it's not all on your shoulders. If you have somebody who might be able to help, Mike is very good at kind of getting people up to speed and enabling them to do this kind of stuff. And once you do one model, the next one is so much easier. It's just really expressing what you already know in a notation that is new. But once you get the handle on the notation and the process of developing a model, it'll be easier and easier. Wouldn't you agree, Eric?
Yeah, and I also wanted to put a pitch in for Mike. I mean, it seems like a daunting task, but just talking through the activities, Mike was able to turn it into a model very simply. So I know it's daunting, but I think it wouldn't be as much of a time effort as you might think. I think if you just started somewhere, I think you'd be surprised how quickly it can go.
Yeah, Josh? Sorry.
Oh, no, this is a great conversation. My question is really more rudimentary, and that is, what can you just really briefly describe in this diagram, what is the meaning of the crosses, the X's, the solid lines, and the dotted lines, lines that have arrows, lines that are just arrowless, just so that I can, when I think about putting something like this together and starting from an understanding of what you've already presented, it would help me to know that.
I can answer that if you like.
Sure.
Just start with the top. The outside rectangle, that's labeled GLWA. That's an organizational boundary. And then these swim lanes are individual roles. So operations, finance, the energy team. Those little, the thing that looks like a clock, it's sort of in the bottom or center left, where it says bill received 2 to 3 days. That's a event. And then the arrows are, those are sequence flows. It just means that, right after that timer occurs, then, which was every 2 to 3 days after the first month, then that gateway with the X on it gets activated. And this one happens to be a join. You just notice there are more than one arrow coming in and only one going out. That's
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. That's a gateway, but that's a join. The yellow boxes, those are tasks or activities. That's something that uses resources and requires work, takes money and people. The gateway that you see on the output that has one input, it's labeled, is there a deviation from budget or history? That's got 2 outputs. That's a split. It goes either one way or the other, not both. That's in contrast to the gateway that follows that, that's got a plus sign on it. That is a parallel gateway. It splits both directions simultaneously. So one goes up and one goes to the right, those arrows. And those become important because you have to make sure that all of these flows sort of get synchronized back together again, right? Before everything comes to a close at the end of the month. So you don't want to have any hanging activities. So there's another parallel gateway at the top left. Doesn't have a label on it, but it's just splitting the tasks. And then what else we got in here? Well, we have, like systems, like you see Power BI and Capturus, which I guess is a finance system. There are documents. That's where we put the metrics or KPIs or whatever. You see some people icons here, like in the, Eric mentioned the energy team role swim lane at the top. There's an operations group that is consulted when they do this reporting and review. And then everything comes together and ends with that event at the very end called end monthly process. So it gives a very, as you drill down on these, it gives you much more detail on exactly what's happening. It is an accurate representation. This is not like the old workflow diagrams that we used to create. It's not sloppy at all. Everything has a very specific meaning. And it helps us to be precise about when we're trying to describe to somebody what the heck's going on. It helps convey exactly the meaning that we wanted, and not something else.
Yeah, it would be really helpful to have, a legend or something like that to go with it. There we go. Okay.
Give me just a second. In the chat line, there is a link to a document called Business Process Modeling Guidelines that was developed on this project. And there, I just pulled this up. the notation we're using is Business Process Model Notation 2.0, and this explains, this just one sheet shows, you know, the symbols that are used. But the link will give you a, and it's posted to our knowledge base, will give you a document that provides, that Mike has written, that provides guidance on where to, you know, what the software is, and examples of how to build a model and so forth.
For what it's worth, I'm going to butt in here, and I'm sorry, George, just for a second, is a lot of you guys are aware that we're also trying to start a WEF Energy Committee, and I think right now it stands as a WEF Energy Working Group or something, doesn't matter. And there's been a number of questions is what's the difference between the WISE Energy Management Biweekly Team and the WEF Energy Committee? Since we're both talking about energy, I suggest this right here, and Josh's excellent question and George's discussion and such about the process that we do internally. What are the steps going forward? How do we do this? How do we work back and forth to enable energy management to occur within our utility is the focus of this. And then all of the other rabble-rousing stuff and looking at different technologies and everything, that's the WEF Energy Committee. So there you go. Just wanted to interrupt and just describe that, just so folks kind of have a sense for, you know, why are there two things and why is GLWA doing them both? It's because Eric's taking on huge shoulders here. He's doing what George is doing with several team, and Eric just now has two team now. Anyway, y'all are awesome, and I'll be going back to mute.
Okay, man. Okay, so I'm trying to see if we lost Blair. She joined, and then I hope she wasn't having issues with access. So Josh, this will become part of the slide deck that you know, I just put it, so I will save this to the folder for this that's dedicated to this meeting, so you can see this, and also there's a link to that document I think you'll find helpful. If anybody has questions about the details of how to get going and stuff, Mike is really a great resource, and just you know, let us know. So let me just go to the previous one. Any other questions on the what we're looking at?
Cello, do you know, in general, do all participating partners, like even outside of this group, do we all have access to software like this, or are we all using something different? Do you know?
That is a very good question. And there is a history, you know. I come from the Balkans, you know, so everything has history. Everything is burdened by the history. So anyway, when we started this 5 years ago, or 5 years ago, we started with a product called Signavio. If you can look at this one, this actually was pulled off. The Signavio produced this chart. But here you will see some of the other, like Camunda is another software provider, and I'll let Mike Barnett can comment on what I'm saying, but we had selected Signavio because it's really a powerful product. It has a lot of functionality that's excellent, but it is, for some utilities, expensive. What is the license now, Mike?
I'm thinking it's around $150 a month, something like that. So it really only makes sense for groups within a utility that are going to do this. But the others, like Camunda, has a time unlimited free version. There's another. There are several that provide free versions. So they have that sort of freemium model where you get something for free, and if you want to expand and do more, you can pay them. And some of them are a lot cheaper than Signavio. Signavio has a number of advantages. technically I know them to be quite good, but and the institutions they're aligned with are quite good. And they provide a lot of capabilities that just make our life in terms of, you know, maintaining a repository and curating the whole thing a lot easier. So, but not to suggest that it's the only one. I mean, there's IBM, what's it called?
Blueworks.
And
Blueworks, yeah.
And
let me just
several
jump in
others.
because I will forget. The one thing that is critically important is that it may you may find a piece of software that says, yeah, we have BPMN, you know, but there's a difference. If you look at Visio, for example, which is very, you know, commonly used, the difference is that you want a product that actually is not just to make pictures, but that has the underneath actually can be exported. That when you make a diagram, that it actually follows really the BPMN notation, and that there's a database underneath that you can import to other products. Well, Microsoft made a decision since then to really make could you make it just so it's I'm not sure that I can best describe. You know what I'm talking about, Mike. Would you mind expanding on that?
You can use Visio if you use the Visio BPMN 2.0 template exclusively. The issues that arise, clearly what we're trying to do is raise the level of process modeling and encourage the team members to apply BPMN because it just helps with clarity and therefore sharing. So it's a great, BPMN 2.0 is a great standard. It's not a proprietary standard. It's a publicly available standard, and all of the BPMN tools must comply with that standard. One way in which they need to comply is to be able to export their models in a standard format. Signavio does that, Camunda does that, most of the other tools do that. Visio does not. So when we use Visio to build BPMN models, we always, for the WISE repository, we have to convert them into the BPMN standard format using separate tools. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And what you don't want to do if you use Visio is to mix and match shapes. That the modelers need to have a kind of a split brain. They have a modeling persona where they are using pure BPMN and being very careful about what they model. And then they have other needs. If I need to give a presentation to the CEO, I gotta, I got 2 minutes to explain something. I have to use, PowerPoint and I'll bring in all other sorts of shapes and whatever I need in order to achieve that. But in terms of the WISE repository, when we build process models, we want it to be BPMN 2.0 so that it has clarity and it's easy to share. So that's just a caution about using Visio or other tools that are like it. Use the BPMN 2.0 template.
Yeah, and the reason that we call it models is because you can actually simulate things. Once you define, for example, I'm sorry, I'm working on two screens. So once you define these things, you can associate resources that are time required to these different activities, and you can simulate how does as is compared to with the to be, whether it's going to be done faster, cheaper, you're going to need fewer people, trucks, whatever. So there are things that right now we're just trying to document things in one way, but with a full-blown product, you can keep extending that into more advanced things. So I think these modeling guidelines that I gave you the link to in the chat line, I would say will be very. You'll find that very useful because it kind of gives a step-by-step explanation.
Josh has had his hand up for quite a while.
Yeah, sorry, Josh.
Oh, no, this is great. My my questions are definitely easily deferrable at the moment to listen to, while I listen to you guys. Yeah, I guess my question you sort of partially answered, which is, I mean, this gives us kind of a view of what the sausage maker looks like, but you mentioned that there's a database lurking underneath it, and that and then you started to hint at you can use it to actually you can do dynamic modeling of some form that would change sort of some output somewhere, I would imagine, right? So I can't really tell from this what that might be, but you know, I am curious about whether or not, you know, things like, because, you know, organization structure information goes in there. If there's like positions that are then contributing to these workflows and FTEs associated with those positions, and, you know, those kinds of things. You know, dollars, Matt, is usually a good thing to track and show and discuss, along with other aspects of information that might be traveling along these lines. And so I was curious about that. And then the second non-related to that comment I was going to make is that the city of Portland is, you know, I think in some ways it's positioning itself to be a leader on climate, right? And it's an important conversation at the executive level. So, you know, we just had a meeting with a bunch of the technical folks and analysts on utility bills and on utility data, because it's very timely, this discussion, because it's, for us, it's coming up as a need from all of these different directions. And so, but one of them is a fourth lane in that diagram, which is GHG tracking. So it's you know, and it is definitely, you know, one that that would use utility data as a major component of what it's trying to do. That's all I was going to say. So,
Okay.
So there was a question and a comment in there.
Yeah, that's great. So what I did is, as I'm frantically trying to address your questions, this comes from a case study from Grand Rapids, where they looked at something called CROMAIR from EPA requirement for reporting from industry. So they developed an as-is model and calculated what was the cost to complete it, hours that utility had to spend on this, and then industry for reporting, and then designed a modified model. And I'm now frantically looking for the case study. So I will give you a case study. I will give you a case study from Grand Rapids, a link to it in a moment. As you can see, we have a number of case studies there. So where is Grand Rapids? Anyway, I'll find it and I'll send you so you can see an example of somebody. Oh, there it is. Okay, give me a copy link. And I'll put it in the chat line. So this is the link to the PDF file that describes the study that yielded this result, Josh. So you can see, you know, what they did and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, no, that is kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah,
and it has to do with how do we justify another fancy tool you know, it just looks like the next shiny thing, frankly, if you're trying to get your managers to pay for it. So that's kind of where I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. There are tools that are free. Camunda has a free version, but I don't think that BlueWorks from IBM has a. But the thing that is most important is for people to really develop the knowledge about how to use the notation, how to describe these things, and actually a lot of times this is why I would very much encourage folks to start posting things. When people even start like these are our KPI reports and dashboards, even just if it's a snapshot, it's useful for somebody else. So one of the things we're trying to really encourage is peer-to-peer collaboration. So you know, there are many things that utilities through sharing, you know, it doesn't require to go and ask for money, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I am. You know, Leo, who's on the call, I believe. And,
yes, yes.
And the energy team folks, they put together before I arrived at Portland. They have that charter that we shared a little bit about, I think, in our presentation. But that we can pop that in there. And there's a very short. I saw John's note there about you know, this doesn't have to be a master's thesis. It can be you know, it can be a pretty short document too. So we've got that end of it. I think it's like 4 pages or something, and it does contain a very simple plan that I'll pop into the.
Yeah. So what this is the result of what we were talking about at the last meeting. We had a session to look at the challenges that may be impacting energy management, and it seems like they had, you know, that the processes are not well documented and transparent. So that's one of the things we're trying to address with this modeling stuff. Engaging stakeholders is not common or consistent practice. Again, if you have these swim lanes, at least you know who's involved. Then it's a choice to ignore them. But if you don't even know that they're involved, you don't even have a choice to ignore them. So information to make sound decisions is lacking. Methods for assessing risks are lacking. And what this is from a spreadsheet, from this spreadsheet. Is it big enough so you can see what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay. So I took these things. I'm sorry, this is from PowerPoint. What was entered into the Mentimeter, I put in, is now in this spreadsheet as the, I'm sorry, this was the first one. The first one was about barriers. So this is posted, and I'll send you a link for this. I think I can guess who made this comment. Only one Eric on staff. I would take a wild guess who wrote that comment. So what I thought may not be a bad idea for us to kind of look at these things and say, oh, sorry, is this an organizational problem, a workforce leadership process problem, or a technology problem? To just try to identify where are most of the barriers and challenges. What are the most important aspects that are driving them? So it's now only 13 minutes left in our call today, but this spreadsheet will be posted, and we can perhaps, so I don't want to take all the time to do it now, but it'd be nice to categorize them and also look at what's the impact of this, so we can, the good thing about starting with challenges is that as we go forward and we start working out some approaches and solutions, and we can go back and say, are we addressing all of those things that people have? And we can augment and, you know, keep a list of these challenges and barriers just to see whether we're grounded in the real problems that people are facing. Does this make any sense? You guys tracking? Does it make sense? I can't see.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. So we originally thought we would have, time to maybe go here and assign a category for these things and see what the impact is, but we may leave that for the next meeting. You think, Eric, you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, we can do that for next.
And what, so that's one thing. And the other thing that we, I'm in the wrong PowerPoint presentation. Sorry about that.
So do you have categories that
yeah, I can show you what. Let me pull up the spreadsheet. So the categories that let me just. This is how I define the categories. So it's in the tab called lists. So if we need to change so these are the categories that I have defined, and this was the impact. But it's very easy to add here and make that an option, both for the barriers or challenges or for the improvements that we have discussed. And what we can do then next time, it's a very good point. Instead of just using mine, we'll just start with this and see if we can make a change in that list.
And are those pull down menus in the master spreadsheet?
Yes, because because when you go here, it'll
right there it is. Yep.
Do the list, and if you go here, it'll do that list. And if we, it'll be a piece of cake to change so that the right stuff appears in the pull down lists. So.
That's
okay.
awesome.
Okay, so that's, and also we asked last time what would help improve, and it seems that like the top two, and this was your voices really, and the top two had to do really with communication and education and inclusion of people. So, and then a consistent method. And we can see that technology was not considered the highest area of opportunity for improvement. And this is continuation of that list. And again, it's collaborate because there's a limit in Mentimeter how many of you can have on a page. Again, what was scored highly is collaboration, and then measurements and stuff like that. So this was very helpful, but it will instruct our thing and then this was the other side of the spreadsheet. So I want to stop here before I launch into that description of how this fits with the other parts of WISE. Eric, I want to go back to you and the others and see if there are any questions here or suggestions. I don't want to, rush things too much. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I don't think we have time to launch into the other WISE stuff, but so how do you want to approach evaluating these things? Do you think we should have a little homework and tell people to give this some thought? So next meeting we can
well, I can do what I can do. I can put these things into something like Microsoft Forms or how about we split the work this way? I will post a spreadsheet. Oh, okay. If you have, I will need the categories, the definition of categories. And if I have definition of categories, I can just send out a Microsoft Forms set of these things where people can all vote and we can see how people voted.
Right.
But in order to do that, I'd have to, so if we can spend a few minutes today to discuss the categories, then I would have enough to to send out so that people can vote. So we have a few minutes. Let's brainstorm. What are the categories for challenges in addition to these?
And these happen to be, if you look at people, process, technology, it's kind of what we've been working with overall. It's just that organization, workforce leadership are a little bit more on the people side, right? And then processes and technology.
Does budget constraint kind of, I mean, I don't know if that's I mean, yeah.
Should I say it's budget / resources or because maybe, maybe you have the money, but you don't have the people.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that might be an organization, but I could be
Well,
I could be wrong.
I could be wrong too.
Well, I don't think there's a wrong answer.
Yeah.
Take that back. I think it. Oh, and I see George has his hand up.
Yeah. George, your microphone is off.
I got too many windows open. I don't know where I am. Anyway, I'm just gonna, so I shouldn't have I prematurely raised my hand. I'm gonna check that energy management assessment I told you we're embarking on next month. I just want to show you or tell you what the categories in that are. It's ISO driven, but I think Cello, you've hit them all. But well, I'll just find the file and I'll raise my hand again.
Okay. Any votes? So George will send me something to. Does anybody have an idea how to add more things or delete some things to make it more clear? If we make too many categories, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to sort it out later.
Where would we put? I'm sorry. Where would we put supply chain issues? Where would that go?
I'm sorry. Which issues?
Supply chain.
I said,
supply chain. Okay,
yes.
Let me just put it here for now.
Procurement.
Procurement. Could that category just be external, or something? I don't know. I'm just, because there are a number of things that would, that might fit in there.
Procurement, regulatory. There's a lot.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So what I can do, okay, I can, okay. Do you think it's okay if we have this many categories? Or is that too many categories?
You could consolidate later.
Okay, so we can do two things. I can first send a poll to just find out what people think about this, and then send the poll to vote. Or we can just say, okay, this is good, and then I can just go and send the poll that basically asks these, to rate these questions. To rate this. Sorry.
I stopped raising my hand and just
just come in.
But it's just you might find out that they self-select. So the ones that don't, once you go through the assignment, there'll be some orphans perhaps.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's my homework. It'll be forms. So you will receive these forms within a few days. I just want to let you know that there's utility management conference next week. Zonetta will be there and I'll be there, and so it'll be kind of quiet on this energy front for a little while, but we'll be back here in a couple of weeks, right, Eric?
Well, and I'm off. I'm on vacation 2 weeks from now, so it's up to
Okay.
you if you want to have a meeting without me, or if you want to wait for me 2 weeks after that.
So the person who approved this vacation is Dr. John Norton?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
He's
it's
on the-
really John's. Yeah, well, have a good
What are you gonna
time.
do? I want to go leave. And it's like, well, look, guys, it's not Europe where you get to vacation every year, but he insisted. And so he gets a vacation this year.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Any other thoughts before we break?
I just, I would, maybe I'll talk to Eric later, but this energy management assessment thing we'll be going through on March 1st. It might be a good thing that I could bring forward and just walk the group through what we did and what the outcomes were and what the next steps are.
Okay,
Because
That sounds good.
it kind of goes back to the business process model of developing the strategic energy management plan. So it's a pretty detailed process that we're going through on March 1st. But if I do it afterwards, then I'll be able to kind of tell you what the outcome is and what our priorities have been set for.
that sounds great. That sounds great. And if there's anything that either Mike Barnett or Scott or I can do to help you, just let us know. All right, Eric?
Yep.
You just ring one of those bells and we'll come running, Okay, well, I'll stop the recording and now you can say what